Hey Robert, how are you doing? We're gonna create the breakout room. Hi everyone. Let's wait just a few more minutes to see if we have more participation, more attendance, and then we can start with the workshop.
Hey, Professor.
Hey Robert. Okay, I think that I'm gonna start. Let's start with the workshop because I think it's the what we're going to do today. We have a few parts and sections that we want to complete with the Jupyter notebook. So that's why I'm going to start now. Let me with this. So let me introduce myself first, and then let's start working with the hands-on activity in introduction to Python. So my name is Carlos Teram. I'm assistant professor at the CIS department. And what we are going to learn today is just a basic introduction to Python, how to work with Jupyter notebooks, and how to create a statement control with Python, and especially how to work with data frame. So this is the first part of the workshop. We have a series of workshop. The first part is going to introduce Pythons to get familiar with Pythons. And then we have three more sections that is to introduce machine learning algorithms for healthcare sector application. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I will have two rooms. The main one, which is this one, we are going to where I'm going to be doing the workshop, the main part. But the second room, if you have any questions or you get stuck or you think that you get behind, there will be Robert Beetlejuice. This is a learning assistant student from the CIS department. So he will be glad to help you if you have any questions or in case that you get behind, okay, from the activity that we will do today. So in order to start, guys, I'm going to share with you on the chat, you will find a link. Please use that link. That link will send you to open a Jupyter notebook, okay? Before to do any modification, I will ask you to do a copy. So please first do a copy. I will show you how to do that. And we will do first a copy, and then we will manipulate the Jupyter notebook and update it with the activity that we will do today. So let me know if you are able or you were able to open the Google Colab. And if you can see the introductions to Python Jupyter Notebook. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Hello.
Okay. So let me know, please, if you can see my screen. I'm sharing the screen. I just want to make sure that I'm sharing with you.
Yes.
Thanks. Okay. So this is the Jupyter notebook that we will be using today. So the idea is that you will follow me and we are going to complete the different tasks that we are going to find in this Jupyter notebook, which is an introduction to Python, how we can create variables, print the variables, and manipulate variables. We are going to create some control statements, and at the end, we are going to work with data frame, how we can manipulate data frame, which is a data structure mainly used for data manipulation, okay? So the first things that we are going to do, because this notebook, the links that I share with you can be seen by all of us. And so in order to avoid any conflicts about the manipulations, what we are going to do is let's do a copy first. So let's go file, and then we can save as a copy. Save a copy in Drive. And then you will have a copy for that Jupyter notebook. In that way, each of you will have a separate copy, okay? And we will have any conflicts once we start updating or modifying information in the Jupyter notebook. So my recommendation is let's do here your name. Okay, just to make sure that you know that that is your document in your file. So the first things that we are going to do in this lab is we will learn the basic of coding in Python that will necessary to build machine learning application. So these first two sessions will provide us the base knowledge or skills to get it familiar with Python in order to start working then with the next three sections, that is the introductions to machine learning, okay? So The first part of the lecture is how we can use or get familiar with Jupyter Notebook. In this particular case, we are using Google Colab. Google Colab provides some resources in order to deploy our applications and to run our code. The second part, we are going to start warming up using the print functions. We are going to print string variables first, and then we will print numerical values. We will create variables and data types. We will create and print variables, concatenate variables in the print statement. And then we will go over control statements, if else statement, pandas, which is a data frame. Pandas is a data frame, a data structure that helps us to manipulate data, clean data. We will create a data frame from a dictionary, which is also a particular data structure. Basic operations, additions, we are going to know basic operations dealing with pandas in order to clean out our data, selecting and filtering data, modifying and updating data, and handling missing data using pandas, okay, which is a particular library in Python. So that's the idea. That's what we are going to cover today. So let's start if you're ready. So the first problems is let's practice changing the title of our notebook, which is what we already did. We create a copy and we rename the title of our notebook. So in here, I asked to change it by your name. The second part is to create a cell. When we are working with Jupyter Notebooks, there are two different cells. One cell is for text. So that means that you can add comments on your code. You can provide comments about what that function does or what piece of code does. That will help you to remember what that code does, and also for others if you are going to share your code later with somebody else. Well, and the second cell, the second code cell is to add code. The cell code is where you are going to implement your algorithms, okay? Where you are going to type your code. So the first thing is that let's create a cell. Yes, I think that it was recording already. Let me see. Yeah, it's recording the lecture. Yes. So first thing first, how we can add new cells into my Jupyter Notebook. So here, there is two different ways. If you click in that cell, this is actually a text cell, if you can see. In the bottom, it will pop up two options. One of the options is to add a cell for coding, and the second option is to add a cell for text. So if we add that cell there, for example, we can write something like, here you can add comments to explain your code, right? So, and then that is the text we just wrote it there. Something that I want to highlight here is that in this particular format, the text use a markdown syntax. I'm going to share with you a markdown commands that you can use in order to enhance the visibility of your text. So here you can find out. In the chat, I'm going to paste the link where you can find some syntax that you can use in order to enhance the text that you are including in your Jupyter Notebook. For example, it could be to include titles, to include bullet points and other things. So that is done with a markdown syntax. For example, this is how it would looks like if you want to bold a particular comment. That is going to be with a star symbol. and that will make that particular word or sentence in bold. So this is what I was talking about, a markdown. So I share with you a guide or a cheat sheet that you can use in order to improve or to format the text that you are including in your Jupyter notebook, okay? So that's the way that we can add a text cell. And now let's add a coding cell. To add a coding cell, the same things, you can click in the previous cell, and below you will see the two options, coding and text, and we can add the text right here. I say that there is two different ways that we can add a new cell. So this is an option, but the second option is up here. If you see code and text is the same. You just click the cell and then go up here and do code, and it will include the new cell. If you do text, it will include a text cell. So in here, we can do something like, let's print hello world, right? So this is a string variable actually. So we are going to print this text. How do we run the cell? So to run the cell, we have to click in here. You see the play button. So you can click in the play button and it will run it. Okay, first it will connect to the server. And now it will display the output of the print function, okay? So that is the print function right there, hello world. Another way that you can print the cells, if you are using Windows, you can do Control Enter, and it will print the output of that cell, of the particular cell that you are in. Or you can, if you are using Mac, you can do Command and Return, and it will also execute that cell. Or just click in the play button, and it will display the code that you have inside that cell. So for example, here you can do Control Print or Command and Return, and it will display the variable in this case for the print function. Let me see. Okay, so here let's run the code below. To print the text, I will learn the basic skills to implement the machine learning algorithms. Again, one more time to practice and to make sure that we know how to print the informations. We are going to run it in here, and it will print the information that we have typed inside the print function. So in here, what you are going to do, you are going to practice how to print a string value using the print function. So it says introduce yourself, and you are going to do the department that you are working with, and using two separate print function. So the first part we are going to do, I am system professor. And my name is Carlos Terán. In the second line, we are going to do the department. Let's say I'm working at CAS department. Okay. And then we can just run the code. Let's practice one more time with the print function, the problem 2.3. What we are going to do, we are going to do the age. So in here, so if you notice, we are using the double quote to print the string value. So in this case, my age is, let's do 31, and let's print it. Okay. So complete the code by printing your age on the next line. So this is actually repeated. We can just skip that one. So in the problem 2.5, let's practice. In this case, you are going to type the whole line of code. So you are going to type the function, the print function, and then your favorite animal. I don't know, let's do my favorite animals. Dogs, for example. And we print the value. Okay. So for the third part, now we are familiar how to use the print function and how to run a particular cell in a Jupyter Notebook. Okay, so now let's see how we can create and print variables. It could be also numerical values in my Jupyter Notebook. The third part is let's create and print variables, okay, or the values of those variables. Run the code below to create a variable called PD, assign the string introduction to Python, and then we are going to print the variable. So in this case, because we are creating text or string values, those must be inside, or the text must be inside between a double quote. So in this case, introduction to Python. So this is my variable. I just call it PD, but you can name it, let's say, variable _1. You can name it as you want, but there are some rules that you have to follow in order to name a variable. For example, you cannot start a variable with a number. Let's say that I want to do 1 here. I will have an error. I cannot start a name of a variable with a number. I cannot do 2 different names. My space variable, this is not allowed, right? If you want to do this, you have to connect it with an underscore, my variable. Okay, so there are some rules that you have to follow when you want to create a variable. So now that I assign a value, in this case, the value is a string, I can print it. So I'm gonna print the value. Let's run it, introduction to Python, right? So I'm gonna do actually one more example here. Let's do, for example, the value zip code 32311, and let's print the zip code value. So we're gonna use it. I'm gonna print it here, and we have create a variable. In this case, that is a numerical value, and we are printing with the print function. Okay, we are printing it with the print function. Well, we are going to now work with the problem 3.1.2. Let's complete the code below. We are going to create a variable called age and assign it to it with your age to that variable. Okay, so the name, the variable that, or the instance that we want to create is age equals to, in this case, let's do 45, and let's print the age. Okay, so we have created a variable and we're printing the age. Some things, when we are working with Python, we don't have to specify the data type of the variable. What I mean by that is, like, for some of you that have worked maybe with Java or C++, remember that in Java, we have to specify the data type of the variable that we want to create. So in this case, it's 45, which is an integer. So in Python, we don't have to do that. we just define the name of the variable, and then we assign the numerical value or a string or a Boolean type. And we don't have to identify the data type for that particular variable. So that's, may say, is one of the advantage that we don't have to care about that. But if we want to be more precise with the memory consumptions, C++ is a better option. So far we have created our own variables, and we have used the print functions to print the value of that variable. So let's work with the 3.1.3, complete the code below to create a variable called my department and assign a strings with the name of your school to it. So here, I'm gonna do my _ department. And I'm gonna do is actually suggests me to auto-complete it. Computer information science. And let's print my variable, my _ department. Okay. There is, so far we have using the print function. And as before, you can, do as many print function as you want. But there is a optimum option to use the print functions to print more than one variable in the same print function. And this is actually the way that I used to do. When I want to print a function, I do the format. I use the format function inside the print function with the print function. So the format functions allow us to print the values of different variables in the same print statement. For example, let's work with the problem 3.2.1. Let's create a variable called my name and let's assign our names to that variable. Using this variable, print the sentence my name is, and then it will print the name, right, stored in that variable. So in this case, remember, we want to create a string, so that means that it needs to be between the quotes. So it's Carlos. So what is going on here? Now the print function, if you see, the print function has some new syntax, let's say that way. That syntax is the curly brackets. These curly brackets and the format function. What is happening here in this line is whatever my name variable has will be printed inside the curly brackets. In my case, this code will print, hello, Carlos Terra. So that's what this piece of code will print. So whatever is in my variable, my name, will be printed inside the curly brackets. So I'm gonna run it, and there you go, okay? So the curly brackets specify where to print the output or what my name is stored. So let's work one more example with that. So with the 3.2.2, formatting multiple variables, create a variable called name and age to store a value to each variable. So my name, I'm just gonna do Carlos, and the age, this is a numerical value. So let's do 65. And in here, I want to use the print function. Okay, so let's create it. Let's create the whole line from scratch. So here, I'm gonna do my name is, right? And I will do the curly brackets. So the curly brackets means that I'm going to print the output of my name variable inside those curly brackets. And I am the years old. Now, let's use the format function. The format function is gonna be after the ending double quote, that format. And here, the first variable that will be printed here is my name. So I'm gonna do here name. And the second one will be age. So age. Let's run it. My name is Carlos and I'm 65 years old. So that is the way we can use the format functions with the print functions to print the variable. So let's work now with the problem 3.2.4, name a placeholder in an instructor and store a string with the name of your instructor. In year, store an integer value with the year of this workshop. So the idea is that once we print out the information, it should look like this. This workshop is led by such instructor in such a year. Okay. So here we have to complete the whole code. So the first variable, let's call instructor. Equals to, you can do any name. And the year 2025. And now let's do print, which is the function. And I'm going to copy these things right here, which is what we want. That format. And here I'm gonna do instructor, which is the variable that we just create back here, and the year. Let's run it. Instructor. I'm having an issue here. Year. Print function, format. Oh, my bad. I have to take this out to leave the curly brackets empty. So that was the issue. There you go. So I forgot to remove what was here. That was instructor, and here also instructor. So now this workshop is led by name, Carlos, and year. Okay. So one more example about how to, if you're working with floated points, with decimal points, with a numerical value that has decimal points, we can actually restrict the number of decimal points that we want to print. And the way to do that using the format functions is using this syntax right here. And let me explain what the syntax is about. So in this syntax, what it's telling me, so first, the variables that I want to print is the 3.14159 p-value. And I just want to print the first two decimal points, okay? Two floating points of my numerical value. So here we have the syntax should be the semicolons, that two, which represents the two decimal points of my decimal value, F for the floating point, and the value format, and the name of your variable, okay? If I do, for example, let's do 3, it will print the 3 decimal points, okay? 3 decimal points. If I do 2, it will print just the first 2 decimal points. So this is pretty useful when you want to, you don't want to print a whole decimal points in your code. So any questions so far before to jump into part 4? No, there is no questions. Okay. So let's move with the part 4, which is a if-else statements to control the execution of our code, right? To modify the flow of our code. So the first part, let's use a if statement, the if statement control syntax. So the first problem, the problem 4.1 says, complete the code below so that if the non-variable is positive, it prints positive number. Otherwise, it should print negative number. So in this case, we're going to use the if-else statement, if-else statement. Well, let's do if my value num is greater than 0. Something that we have to keep in mind when we are working with Python is that every statement or every control statement, and when I do, or when I say control statement, I'm including also the loop statements, should end with the semicolon, with the columns, must end with the columns. Now, because we are working with Python, one of the requirements in Python is that we have to work with the indentation. With the indentation means that whatever needs to be inside or the body of my if statement should be aligned with inside the if statement. So I will show you what I mean by that. Let's do here then print. We have a positive number. So this is what I want to print if the number is greater than 0. So here, I don't have to end with the columns. It's only when you define the control statement. So now, let's do the else statement. Else is also a control statement, so it should end up with the columns. And now I'm going to print. Then otherwise, it is a negative number. It is a negative number. So let's run it and it will work. When I was mentioned, what I was mentioned about the indentation is, let's say that I do this. So now, if you see it highlight here, the print function in red, that is because it's not aligned with my if control statement. So if I run it, I will have an indentation error. So because print is part of the body of my if statement, it should be aligned inside the if keyword, okay? And then it will work. So that's something that we have to keep in mind when we are working with Python, the indentation. Okay, so the problem 4.2, complete the code below so that if age is greater than or equal to 18, the program's output, you are eligible to vote. Otherwise, the output will be you are not eligible to vote. So it's the same structure. If, so it's already suggesting me how to complete it. I just gonna do from scratch. If age is greater or equal, greater or equal than 18, so then I'm going to print you are eligible to vote. Else, I'm gonna print you are not eligible to vote. Okay, let's run it. And that is the output, right? If we change it, let's do 16, you're not eligible to vote. Okay, that's the way that we can work with if-else statement. So in here, we can practice this part right here. If all three variables are equal, print all numbers are equal. Otherwise, not all numbers are equal. So let's use the same structure if-else statement. If X is equal, so in this case, when we use only just one equal symbol, like this one, is because we are assigning a value. In which this is important to keep in mind as well. This is when we are assigning value to a variable. But in this case, I want to compare values of my variables. So in this case, we have to do equal, equal. Now I'm comparing the variables. When we are using just one equal symbol, that means that I'm assigning a value to that variable, okay? So now we have X equals to Y equals C. And if that happened, that means that all those three numbers are the same. So then I'm gonna print what the problem is asking me, which is all numbers are equal. Else, I'm gonna print not all numbers are equal. Okay. There you go. If I do 15 here, it will print all numbers are equal. So the problem 4.4 is actually the same. So I will leave you as a homework. So to move on. So this one is mainly the same structure and the same piece of code, the same structure right here for the problem 4.4. The problem 4.5. For the problem 4.5, we can have a if-else statement. Sometimes we have more than one condition, like in this problem right here. We want to compare if a particular value belongs to a range of 190, 98 to 80, 79 to 70, and so on. So in this case, we have different multiple conditions that we need to check. So in that case, we are going to use elif statement, elif or else if in Python. So I want to show you how to work when we have multiple conditions that we have to check. So let's create a variable called score. And let's store here, let's say 67. Well, let's start with the if statement. Different condition. So use elif for multiple conditions for a given score. You must provide the corresponding letter. So we have the standard one, the grading from 100 to 90 is A, 98 to 80 is B, 79 to 70 is C, and so on. So let's create a code that helps us to identify the letter for the given score. If the score is greater or equal, so this is the syntax for greater or equal than 90, this is a statement control, so we should end with the columns. Let's print the letter A, right? So now, instead of using else, we are not going to use, in this case, we are not going to use else. We will use elif. Elif score is greater or equal than 80, then we are going to print the corresponding letter, which is B. The second conditions that we want to evaluate if the score is greater or equal than 70, then we want to print the if score is greater or equal than 60, then I'm going to print the, and then at the end, for my last options, I will do the else. Else, let's print F. Okay? So this is how we use the elif condition. So let's run it, and it was D. Okay, we change it. 88, it should be B. So that's an example how we can use a statements control to evaluate different conditions in Python. So here, let's solve these problems. In this one, we are going to evaluate a nested control statement. Nested control statement, that means that we are going to have an if statement inside of an if statement. So that is the nested control statement. Okay, the problem says you are developing a program to determine if a person is allowed to drive. The program should check two conditions. Age requirements: a person must be 18 years old to be eligible for driving. License requirements: even if they are old enough, they must have a valid driver license to drive. So based on the response, what we want to print is you can drive if the person is 18 or older and has a valid license. You need a license to drive if the person is 18 or older but doesn't have a valid license. And the third one is you are too young to drive. Okay, so the first things that we have to do is create a variable, right? Let's create a variable. In this time, I want to prompt to the user to type the age. Okay, let's type the age. In this case, to prompt the information, a text to the user, we use input, and let's do something like please provide your age. Okay, so if we run it, it will, if you just run this code, it will pop up here like a little shell that you can type your age 45. But what happened? What happened is the age, even though we type here a numerical value, it is a string value, okay? It is a string value. So let's do, I think if I do type and do age, 46, a string value, you see that? It's a string value. So how do we fix it? So let's say that you are asking, in this case, age, we are asking for an integer value. So let's do int. So we are casting, this is what we call about, it's called casting a value. So we are doing int, the integer, and now if we do type age with the int, let's run it. Let's do 6 is an integer. So if you want to work with double, so you have to do double here. Well, the second that we want to ask is the license. So let's do something like input. Do you have a valid license? So you can type yes or not. So I want to take it out because I want to show you how to do it from scratch. So yes or no. So here, let's do if. The first condition, if the person is 18 or older, and has a valid license. So if the age is greater or equal than 18, then I want to check if that person has a valid license, which is the second question right here. Do you have a valid license? Yes or no? So if license, which is the name of the variable that I'm using to store that particular response, is equal to yes, then I do have to print you can drive. I want to print you can drive. Else, let's print you need a license to drive, right? Outside, so this is the nested statement inside the if statement. So outside, let's do the else statement. Otherwise, you are too young to drive. So let's print it. So let's provide age, 45. Let's do no. You need a license to drive. Okay, so the code is working. So that is a nested control statement. Nested control statement. Okay, so now let's work with the pandas. Pandas is one of, I may say, one of the main data structure when we are working with machine learning applications to manipulate the data. So in order to import pandas require to import a libraries in order to work with data frames. With data frames, we have to import the pandas library. Sorry for that. Panda is the library that will help us to work with data frame, which is a particular data structure in Python. So we need to do import the library as PD. So you can actually import it. This is the object that we will use to invoke or to use any function that this library pandas has. You can name it if you want. I can name it as a Carlos if you want, but generally we use PD. That means that if any other programmer see my code, he already knows that PD is for pandas. It's like a standard abbreviation and that we used to use for the pandas as a pandas object. Okay. I will show you how to create a data frame from a dictionary, which is also a particular data structure in Python, in C++, Java. This is a general data structure for different languages. So let's first create a dictionary, and then we are going to create a dictionary, and then we are going to create a data frame from that dictionary. Okay. So let's define my underscore dictionary. So this is gonna be the variable name for my dictionary. And we are going to use the curly brackets. So here inside the curly brackets is where we will define the dictionary. Something that we can do is, let's copy to save time this variable or the informations, and let's put it inside the curly brackets. So here we are defining our dictionary. Something that I forgot to tell you is that we have to save the file. So you can go file and save up here, down here, save it. If you have to do any changes, so save it, you won't lose it. So this is my dictionary. How this works? This is the keys. The dictionary is composed by keys and values. Keys and values. These are the keys and these are the values. This is the keys and the values. Once we turn this dictionary into a data frame, the keys will be the columns or as we know, the features. The columns are the features, and these are gonna be the values per each column, right? So now that we have the dictionary, let's create a data frame from that dictionary. So I will do df equals to, remember that we include or we import PD. The reason of this object is because any functions that we want to utilize or use from the pandas library needs to be invoked or called using the PD word, this one right here. So df, this is a new variable as before, as we were creating the string and the integers. df is going to be a variable, but in this case, it's going to be a data frame. So PD, this is what I was talking about, PD that data frame. Data frame. So data frame is actually a function, or I may say a constructor, that will help us to create a data frame from the given dictionary. Okay, so I'm gonna use the dictionary and I'm gonna put it in here. Let's run it. It's work, right? We have a green check symbol. And now what we're gonna do is let's print the different, let's use different functions from the PD. So let's do data frame. Data frame is already a member for the PD. Is a, let's say that an object is created, well, that was created through the PD object. So we can, by that we can use the some pandas functions. In this case, we are going to use head, tail, columns, describe, and info. So what we're going to do is, instead of having all this information just in one cell, let's copy those. Let's do different cells to print the information. In that way, I think it's gonna be more clear to see the output of each of those functions. So what I did was I just create a new cell code. You can just click in here in cells code. Let's copy, and let's just leave the first line, the first command, print df and the head. So let's run it. And as you see, here we have the data frame. This is our data frames: glucose, the first column, blood pressure, and BMI. As I was mentioned, the keys will be the columns, and then we have each row, which is a sample, will have the information. Well, the head will print the first, if we don't do any value here, it will print the first 5 rows, by default. The tail, it will print the last 5 rows. So I'm gonna copy this, cut this. I'm gonna do a new cell, and I'm gonna run it, and it will print the last rows. You can see it start from the last one to the first, the tail. df column, this function right here, what that function does is to print, this one will print the name of the columns of your data frame, okay? Which is actually pretty important when you want to clean up or to know what are the features that you are working with to train or to build your machine learning model. So the describe is a pretty helpful functions. The describe functions will give you some statistical information, the mean, the standard deviation, the maximum value, the minimum value, and the different quantiles, okay? The different quantiles of per features or per columns, okay? So that is the describe functions, which is pretty useful. Now we have the info function. The info functions will also, it will provide you or give you the data type of each column. And most important, it will let you know if there is any null value amongst the columns values. Okay, so here we have the column, the first column, the glucose. If we have a null value, no, we don't have any null value, and the type or the data type of those values, which is also pretty important because let's say for some reason, those values, the glucose, which should be an integer value, is instead of being an integer value, is a string value or a char value. So if you run it, if you try to train your model with a string or values that are not numerical values, the model will say, hey, I don't know how to deal with non-numerical values. Okay, so we have to make sure about that. Unless that you are working with a particular application like natural language processing or something like that, which is different. That, by the way, at the end, we turn all those words into arrays, which is a different things, but those models needs to be trained with numerical values. At the end, that is like a numerical methods that we have that is behind those process. So in the problem 5.3, here we want to print the column a particular value. Select a column for a particular value. Selecting and filtering data, use the previous data frame and print the column BMI. So I'm gonna do here the column BMI, and then print the BMI with the glucose. So we are going to print just the information for those two values, for those two columns. Okay. So we have the BMI and the glucose, and the first one is printing only the BMI column. So also we can filter what we want to print using some filter informations. So for example, here, let's say that we want to only print those patients where the glucose is let's do less than 116. And the second one will print those that where the blood pressure is equals to 40. Okay. So for the first part, those ones where the pressure is where the glucose is less than 116, we have just only 2 patients with that particular characteristic, which is 85 and 98. And for those ones where the blood pressure is equal to 1, we have just 1 patient with that blood pressure. Okay, so that's also a way that we can filter our information. So let's now move with the 5.4. In here, I'm going to let's add a new column to our data frame. This is pretty easy. That's the way that we can add a new column is, in this case, I want to add the age. A new column called age. So we just do data frame, which is the name of my variable, age, which is the name of the column that I want to add, and then the values. In this case, is this list right here. That is the new column. And if we printed it, you see that at the end, we have the new column or the new feature added in here, some things that we didn't have before. So if we add here, we have just the glucose, blood pressure, BMI, but now we add the age right here, okay? So now, in order to, if you want to modify a particular value of your data frame, we can do the index location, the ilog function. That's the index location. You can modify a particular value of your data frame using index location. For example, in this case, for this purpose, because that will help us for the problem 5.5, I'm going to modify the position 0, 0, which is this one right here, 0, 0, 0, 3, which is gonna be 0, 1, 2, 3, this one right here, and the 2, 2 is gonna be 0, 1, 2, 2, 2 is this one right here. So those values will be modified by num or non-values, okay? So that's the way that we can modify values from our given, oh, it was 33 is here. 0, 3, 0, 3 is this one right here. Yes. 0, first row, and last column, 0, 3. Yeah, that one right here. So now we have some non-values, and that's how we can actually manipulate a particular value of a given column or a column of our data frame. So now let's move, we're gonna save it, and let's move to the problem 5.5, handle the missing data. Let's use two different approaches. Fill the non-value using backfill, using next valid observations to fill the gap, replacing the non-values with the median, or we can just drop a non-value. So first, the first things that we need to do is identify if there is any null value in my data set. So in order to do that, we are going to do the data frame, that column, and that is like, okay, per each column, I will check if there is any null value per each column. If there is any, please list the columns where I do have any missing values. So in this case, if we go up, we have a missing value here, the glucose. We have another missing value here in the BMI, and we have another missing value here in the age. So we have the glucose, BMI, and age, which is corresponds to the location of the missing values. So we are right. So now we have here in the missing columns, we at least identify where we may have some missing values. So I just gonna copy. I don't want to lose the original data set. So what I do is a copy of the original data set. I'm doing a copy of the original data set, and then we can fill those non-values with the bfill method. The bfill methods use the next value observations to fill the gap. Okay, that's what this method does. And I just want to replace it directly to that data frame. And the head, remember, is the function that help me to print the first 5 rows by default. Or if you want to print the first 100, you do here 100, but we don't have 100 rows. We have just a small data set. We're gonna run it, and there you go. What happened? It says, the method says, use the next valid observation to fill the gap. Okay, so here we have a gap, right? It will use the next valid observation, 85. So it is filled with the 85. Let's see, non-value, it will fill the gap with the next valid observation, 28.1. That is the line number 0, 1, and 2. This is the second position, which is here, 21. You see the second position, 21, 28.1, sorry for that, 28.1. And that is one way that we can fill the gaps or fill the missing value. But what I used to do is fill the gaps with the median. So I compute the median of the features, and then I compute it, or I impute those values with the median. I'm gonna run it. Well, hold on, I'm missing here. I want to impute, let's say, the glucose, for example. The glucose, I'm gonna do here the glucose and the glucose in here. I'm gonna run it. So now the missing values, this one right here, which was the first one, for the glucose, the null value, was computed not with the next value, instead was computed with the median of that column, with the median. Or you can actually compute with the mean. There are different approaches that you can do. Instead of the median, you can do the mean for that column. So, or sometimes you don't want to impute any value, you just drop that sample. When I say that sample, you drop that row, the row that has missing values. So if we just do drop non-values and replace the new data frames in the existing data frame, so we just we are dropping all those rows or all those samples that has missing values. So let me go pretty quick in this part right here. So this is if you want to sort the your data frame in ascending order based on a particular column. You can run it, so it will sort it in ascending order for based on a particular or given column. Group by. So in this one, let's say that you want to group by. So in this case, I think that it won't be a pretty good example because most of the features and value are mainly different. So let me try it anyway, but I think it will make more sense. So I want to group by the glucose, group of glucose. Let's see. And then I want to take the mean for that group. But that's why I said I won't do too much effort. Let's group by age better, and then blood pressure. Let's see. So supposing that I'm grouping by age, and then I taking the mean of those sample of those patients that has 28, and the average of that population, the average of the blood pressure of that population. But in this case, most of the values are different. So there's not too much common values. So that's what I was saying. It won't make much sense, but this is an example how we can group by and analyze our data frame. Okay, once you have clean your data and you want to store the data or download it as a CSV file, you do to CSV. To CSV is a function from the Pandas library that help us to store your modified data frame. Okay, so if we do output CSV file, you can run it. And let's see if that's here. It's here. Output.csv. Let's see if I can open it. And it's here. Here is the modified data frame. Then you can store it and you can share with your peers. And that is the way that you can store the a data frame that was modified or downloaded on your local computer. Okay, so that is what I have for you today. So I hope that this is useful information for you. I will be sharing with you all the this complete notebook, and you can practice also on your end with the ones that I share, which is empty. Okay. So I take more time than expected. It was 3 dBm. It's already 10, 14 more minutes. So thank you for your time, actually. Sorry if I took more time than expected. If you have any questions, you can ask me. You can send an email to me or to the others collaborator as well.
Thank you, Dr. Tehran. Are you going to send us a recording of this as well to review?
Yes, Maurice will be as soon as the recorded will be uploaded on the chat. Will be uploaded on the cloud, so I will be sharing with you all the recorded video.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. This was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your attendance.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Looks great. We appreciate it. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thanks, Robert, for your time and your help.